there's more to it than that. And when we think about optimism, it's this belief that whatever situation I'm in, I can make a positive step forward.
Welcome to Behind the Knowledge, a best hour podcast where we dive deep into the lives and stories of inspiring coaches from all walks of life. The two hosts of this show are me, Todd Barber, and my good friend and fellow coach, Todd Occhiuto. Each week, we'll sit down with the most amazing coaches we can find, uncovering their unique paths, the challenges they've faced, and passions that continue to drive them. Whether you're a seasoned coach, an aspiring one, or simply somebody who likes listening to stories of how people achieve the success that they have, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the powerful stories and insights from the world of coaching. This is Behind the Knowledge. Let's jump in.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Knowledge. Pat, once again. This is Brad Marshall in the house.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Excited to have you. We are talking about coaching, man. We want to hear your coaching journey.
Your story. Where'd you start? Where? Very first coaching experience.
The origin story. So for me, I think this story goes back to high school, played sports, baseball, and football. I was very fortunate to have some really good coaches as I was working through those years. Ended up playing in college. Once again, I had some really good coaches who helped me develop
What did you play, both? Football and baseball?
I played football and baseball.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I went to the Division III level and played there.
Yeah.
And so
when you say the word really good coaches, who comes to mind?
So a guy named Andre Gosh was a football coach as well as a baseball coach in high school, and he was pretty hard on us, but at the same time, you knew he cared. And so you always wanted to push really, really hard for him, and I think he pulled the best out of us because of his style of coaching.
Which was hold you accountable, but care a lot.
Yeah, you knew he cared a lot about you, so when he was getting on you in practice, you knew something wasn't up to standard.
Gotcha.
And I think that has stuck with me over the years.
Gotcha. Cool.
And so went to college and studied sports psychology and tried to figure out how do we help people develop and improve and get better, because that was always something that fascinated with me. And then went out into the real world and got a job that paid the bills, working with athletes, working with military folks. And along that way, figured out I need to get in shape myself again after having been an athlete. And so looked up CrossFit. I had a couple buddies who said, hey, this thing is pretty cool. I think you'd like it as a former athlete. So walked in and sure enough, did love it and did that for about a year or two. And as I was continuing along, improving my own health and wellness, the idea of coaching seemed really intriguing to me of, hey, I love working with people, helping them figure out how they can improve in their own lives. And this would be a really cool opportunity to take some of the stuff I've studied and know and how do we help people move better and live happier and healthier lives. So after doing CrossFit for about a year or two, got into coaching. So went to go take the L1, started coaching, and that's been about a 7-year journey, which has been coaching sort of one of the first best hour of the day group development cohorts, which led into a year and a half ago, starting an affiliate. And the rest is kind of history from there. But for coaching aspect, it's amazing how the formative years in high school and college, they come with you and they stick with you. And now I feel myself pulling on those, even now, trying to figure out how to be a better coach, better owner, things like that.
Hell yeah.
And you didn't coach anything before you started coaching CrossFit?
No.
Well, what was your job? Because you said you started helping service members and things like that. What was your job?
So my first job out of graduate school was working at a small school in North Carolina called Campbell University, working with the student athletes there, helping them both in the classroom and on the field, figure out ways they can perform well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as
coaching.
A high school athlete and a college athlete that pulled multiple sports, I would assume that you would help your head coaches work their camps in the summers or something, right?
Well, what's interesting is I didn't do anything on the physical side. I was strictly just, hey, how do we develop the skills that help you to perform well in the classroom and step onto the field? But and then in hindsight, it is coaching. Yeah.
With your job, you didn't do anything while you were still in college or high school to help coach little kids or anything?
I did coach my little brother's basketball team at one point in time, and he was maybe in like 6th grade at the time. So it was like a very small summer experience. But yeah, otherwise, after I went to college and grad school, I didn't coach anybody formally in terms of how do you move better, how do we help you improve health and wellness. It was much more focused on off the field stuff.
Well, that to me is the harder stuff to learn how to do. Right? Is like to learn how to connect with an individual, to learn how to get their mindset right, to learn how to like coach. You were coaching their being, just not coaching their movement.
Yeah, some people might call it lifestyle coaching now or things like that. And so I was fortunate the graduate program I went to was housed in the psychology and counseling department. So just working one-on-one, working with groups was something that we learned a lot about and got a lot of practice in, which pays dividends now, having a chance to work with groups and individuals when it comes to CrossFit and just helping improve their own lifestyle.
And I got to imagine, like, one of the bigger struggles that I know affiliate owners and CrossFit coaches have is getting people to implement the change that they want to make, right? It's like, and a lot of times we as coaches, especially new coaches, come prepared with the information. Like, hey, here's a diet that you should eat. Here, I need you in the gym 4 or 5 days a week. And oftentimes people kind of can't get out of their own way and actually implement that stuff. And it sounds like you had to figure that out with that job beforehand. Is that what you were working on? I gotta imagine if you're working on the stuff outside of and off the field, figuring out how to actually convince them and get buy-in to make the changes is something you...
Yeah, the way I think about the topic or the area of this, how do people perform their best under any circumstances? So you've got athletes who are, signed on for scholarships, they care about their performance, they want to do really well, and it always feels like something's standing in their way. Like, I practice, I rehearse, I do everything I can, and now I step onto the field and for some reason I can't hit the ball, I can't catch the ball, I can't do whatever. And so you start to figure out, okay, well, what's underneath all of that, and what are the things we got to work on so that whether it's practice, whether it's training camp, whether it's the classroom, we put ourselves in a position to be successful. And a lot of that stuff off the field, it's amazing how much it impacts on the field. Or if we're talking lifestyle here, what are all the thoughts and beliefs and things I think about, and how does that show up in how I actually make decisions of what I eat, how I move, things like that.
That makes sense why your gym name then is Greater Culture in terms of...
There was some thought that went into that. Mission, values, the whole thing, the idea of culture. So there's a backstory around that name, and it's meaningful for us, yeah.
Okay, well, do you have more of a backstory than just what we just said there? Like,
yeah.
How'd it go down?
So it's funny, after I feel like a decade of just being in the world of human performance, you start to think about what are the things that are most meaningful and relevant for you. And two big themes really stood out. One was how important culture and community is, of just who you surround yourself with and how quickly that can elevate yourself, move you in the direction you want to go. So this idea of culture and community really stood out to us. And then just this simple idea of how are we trying to get just a little bit better each day. And we started playing around with words that capture some of that, and this idea of just, hey, how do we be a little bit greater each day? We put the two together. We came up with Greater Culture CrossFit of our goal is just a collection of individuals who are trying to move in a better direction for themselves and their community and the folks around them. And so that's how we came up with the name and what we're all about.
That's awesome. So with a name like that and with your background, you must be extremely intentional with how you create that culture, like, right? So
yeah, we try. We've got 4 values that we live and breathe by. At least we try as best we can from top down. One is growth, putting ourselves in positions where we can learn, try and figure things out, how to do things better, differently. Another one is challenge. I'm big on this idea of how we look and how we perceive situations. Is it a threat versus a challenge? If we look at something as a challenge, we typically respond in a much more healthy fashion and can move forward from that. The other thing we focus on is optimism, of just we have a belief that we can make a difference moving forward day after day, and having that viewpoint on the workouts we have, the way we train, the way we try and build each other up is important to us. And then the last one for us is this idea of inspire, which is being inspire.
I thought you said expire.
Oh, no.
I was like, you're all going to die.
A lot of breathing, expiration there.
Yeah.
But no, inspire, this idea of how do we try and motivate and encourage others around us, whether it's inspire yourself, inspire those next to you. So those are 4 values for us that are meaningful. We try and bring them in the way we coach and the way we send out our communications. And you'll hear little snippets around the gym. If somebody says something, you're like, hey, we don't say that in this gym, or we don't talk like that here. You'll hear us catch them.
So clearly you're having to coach your athletes, right, as a CrossFit coach, but you're so committed to the culture that you're developing at your gym, then you need everybody else, the rest of your coaches and team on the same page.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How have you gone about coaching everybody else in that facet?
Yeah, recently our staff has grown. So we've been a gym for about a year and a half, started in the garage for a year. So a very small team. We've grown now to about 8 coaches who help support our gym. And so it really comes from giving them an understanding of what our mission is, what our values are. So when they're coming on board, they look and they see what we're all about, what we expect from them. Started to work into some of our class expectations and class evaluations, which is helpful. And the way we try and communicate to them, the way we try and support them, the way we try and guide them, I feel like, is coaches meetings, communication, and just how we try and operate. What are our standards and norms before we let them get on the floor and get in front of folks is what we try and do as best we can.
Yeah. I think having those expectations, so many times it's like people find somebody and they're like, man, you seem like a good fit as a coach. This would be great. Do you want to coach? Cool, get your level 1. Here's our internship. But there's less of those, here's exactly what we need from you in order to be considered a coach, right? Not just, hey, can you be here at 6 a.m. to coach that class, but like, how do you go about the way that you coach and the way you represent our community? And I think defining that and making sure that you consistently communicate that to your team is huge.
So you seem really well thought out, which is why I'm going to actually ask you to go deeper on some of these. So if we have growth as the first one, the second one was
Challenge.
growth, challenge,
Optimism.
and inspire.
Yep.
So if we look at growth first, what are the ways that you not only just say that as part of the culture, but what are the things you do in order to inspire or in order to promote that in people's psyche, or even how you train your coaches to focus on growth? So what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, a lot of these build off of each other, and some of it is the language we try and use when we're coaching up a workout. Like when you see a workout on the board and people can already make sense, like, ooh, this one's gonna be pretty tough, or this one's gonna be really difficult. And the language that we try and use when we're briefing the workouts, or the way the athletes, we're trying to encourage them to talk about it is, hey, this is an opportunity for us to get a little bit better. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be difficult, but we're gonna grow as a result of this. Hey, we're doing these difficult things because we're gonna see what we can learn and how we can move forward, versus just showing them, like, oh, this workout sucks, it's gonna be brutal, it's gonna be horrible. Like, that type of language really puts us in a spot where it's not going to be as easy to take whatever the experience is and try and figure out ways we can grow from it. And on the flip side, when things don't go so well, I think we've all had that experience where the wheels fall off on a workout.
No.
It's like,
Never.
What do we do in that moment? Is it just like, oh, throw in the towel, this is a wasted day? It's like, no, hey, what did we learn from today?
Yeah.
Even in the things that are struggles and challenges, what did we do a little bit better today? What did we learn? Is it pacing? Is it strategy? Is it technique? Whatever it might be. And then, we send out a communication to our athletes and got a little blog on there called What's on Coach's Mind. So a lot of that is in there as well, just different things happening, quotes that are meaningful, and we try and figure out ways that we try and encourage and slowly drip some of that into it.
I almost think with that growth one, when it goes wrong and you want to educate on that, you can lean on the other one, which was then challenge, be like, hey, guess what? Right now you're facing a challenge.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity to grow.
This is your opportunity
here we go.
to grow.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Okay, so now we have challenge. Is there ways that you intentionally foster that other than the scenario we just talked about?
Yeah, and so for us, that's a lot of the way you talk to yourself, the story that's unfolding. And when we think about challenge, I mentioned, typically when you look at a situation, your brain wants to go either this is a threat or this is a challenge. If it's a threat, you tend to get a little bit tighter, you constrict. A lot of that fight or flight response kicks in, but in more of a detrimental way. Whereas if I see something as a challenge, like, ooh, this is difficult, my brain's telling me this is meaningful for me, but this is an opportunity, this is a challenge. Let me see what I'm capable of in this moment. As a coach, if you can convey that to the member of like, hey, this is an opportunity to say, can you go unbroken? Can you hold on for 5? Can we lift this amount of weight? And try and put them in that perspective, because you're still going to have that fight or flight response. But what they find is it's a lot more helpful. Your blood vessels actually dilate a little bit. You get a little bit more excited. You actually display some of the elements of courage when you think about a situation as a challenge, an opportunity compared to a threat. So that to us, again, comes back to this language. Like, what are the way we're talking to ourselves? What are the way we're talking to our members? How do we encourage them? How do we try and help them see the situation maybe just through a slightly different lens than what they typically would?
And I think the workouts themselves are only one piece of that, right? It's like we do hard things in the gym to hopefully be able to do hard things outside of the gym. Is there anything that you guys do to like encourage individuals in your gym or on your team or even yourself to look for those opportunities to challenge yourselves outside of the walls of the gym?
Yeah, I would say I'd like to be more intentional with that, because I know some gyms go to like, hey, what's our monthly challenge? What's the thing we're going to try and do? I think for us, as of now, it's mainly focused on the workouts, how we think about them, how we process them. There's moments where we know a workout's going to be pretty tough, or there's some of those community hero-style workouts where those are those great moments to do a little check-in with how folks are feeling and how they're thinking about it going into it. But it would be fun to be more intentional. We've done things like Spartan races and other social and community-building events that are tough. But it'd be fun to do something that's a little bit even more intentional than that, of how do we put ourselves in those hard positions, see what happens.
It's interesting that you say that, because I know you well enough to know that you're not afraid of taking on challenges with your full-time job, opening an affiliate, running a podcast, having your hands completely full. So I think even outside of like Spartan races or physical things, I think there's a lot of additional ways to be the example and demonstrate what taking on more and challenging yourself as an individual looks like. And I think I think you being that example is a great way to kind of lead others in that you're influencing inside the walls of the gym, hopefully outside the walls of the gym as well.
Yeah, I think this idea of saying yes to things, so many times you get presented with opportunities, and there's moments where you have to really weigh the pros and cons, and do I have time for this, do I not? But having the opportunity to say yes to a lot of situations, people, places, conversations, you tend to find that goes well, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself and the situation, and it's going to help you to figure out what's the path forward. Do I want to keep doing this? Do I not want to keep doing this? And, for, I think, a lot of coaches, it comes back to how do we help people? And so the more times you can say yes to situations and opportunities, the more ways you can learn about yourself. You can then convey some of that knowledge to the athletes that you're working with, which is always helpful.
Are you a CrossFit coach who's feeling stuck in their development? You're not alone. Many coaches lack good guidance when it comes to how to develop as a coach. They either don't have strong examples they find themselves around, they may lack support from their gym owner, and they just feel unprepared going into their next credential. That's why we made the Knowledge Pro, to fill that gap. It's a mentorship program built for coaches like you. It uses the Knowledge Daily, our comprehensive video library, as well as extra content that we put directly into the Knowledge Pro on our live weekly calls twice a week to mentor you and get you to the next level of development. We've got progressions, we've got scales, we've got one-off tips and tricks, we've got full coached classes by level 4 coaches so you can see an example of what it means to do this job well. All of that will also be walked through each week on those live calls, so that you have a soundboard to bounce off of and a group of coaches looking to be better to help support you in your endeavors. Coaching isn't just knowing what to do, it's also knowing how to do it. And that takes 2 things. 1, an example, and 2, practice. Practice is on your end, you gotta go out there and do it. We can help provide that example and the support with the Knowledge Pro. If you wanna know more, click the link below and give the Knowledge Pro a shot. I look forward to seeing you on one of the next calls.
What was the
Optimism.
Optimism?
Yeah.
You know where you're heading with this thing.
I was actually not going there. What was the
Impetus for that?
Well, yeah, and where, I mean, I love it personally. Like I'm an eternal optimist. I
I am too. It's funny because I think when we talk about that, you hear people say, oh, this just means you're looking at life as the glass is half full. And it's like, partially, but there's more to it than that. And when we think about optimism, it's this belief that whatever situation I'm in, I can make a positive step forward. And even if it's the smallest step in the light of whatever the situation is. And so having an optimistic lens allows you to have some control over how I'm thinking about the situation, how I'm moving forward, because I know I can make even just the slightest change or the slightest decision that can move me forward. And so that for us is really important because it can be very easy to jump on yourself and others and can be what we'd say more pessimistic. So this idea of being optimistic, I have some say or influence over how I think about the situation and how I want to move forward and what that looks like. That's something that's really important to me. And I mean, if you look at some of the research too, optimistic thinking styles tend to lead to happier and healthier lives over the long term. So it's like if we can encourage, potentially even coach people to start taking on some of those tendencies, it's also going to benefit them in the long run when we look about their overall fitness and health and well-being.
I think some people confuse optimism with naivety. Or naivety.
Yeah,
when
like
people will be like,
everything's good, right?
It's all good. It's and it's not feeling. It's just being like, nope, I'm fine, and like shoving other stuff away. And that's not at all what it is. It's like being like, oh, this sucks, but now what? Okay, and I can make something out of this. Did you watch the new Wonka movie?
No.
Dude, the Wonka in it, who gets played by Timothée Chalamet, like he's the epitome of optimism. It's fantastic because he has thing after thing goes super wrong and he just stays like awesome. And it's like this fantastic display of optimism that I watched and I was like, you can't help but just love this experience. So I recommend.
Yeah, I love when you get a chance to see movies, read books where you hear about the people who are in those sometimes really dire situations. You're like, how did they figure this out? How do they navigate that situation? You realize like sometimes it's just the smallest, simplest thing of like, how do I get through this next 5 minutes? How do I get through this next hour? Right. And having that mentality will guide them and allow them to get through even some really tough situations, which is always fun to learn from.
Hell yeah. So last one we got
Inspire.
Yeah. My brain works super well to retain information in case you couldn't figure out.
I can't imagine how many conversations you've had this weekend. I will say this one partially does come from Best Hour. And when we thought about, okay, a lot of these are individual in nature. They can be spread amongst the team, but this idea of what kind of reach and impact do we have? And I know Fern talks about that a lot, of what kind of impact do you want to have? This idea of, well, if we can create a group of people that inspires maybe others in the gym or even others in the community, or figure out a way that we can just put something out into the world that's going to be meaningful. This idea of inspire came up because so many of us see amazing people, amazing feats, and we're like, man, that's really cool. I want to try that. Or I want to be like that person. Or this person lost a bunch of weight or got their life moving in a direction they were happy with, and I'm getting inspired and I'm getting excited by that. And so for us, that was another piece here of like, how do we bring more of that community aspect of we're inspiring each other, we're excited for each other, we, push each other. That to me was another piece that was really important.
Love it. I love it.
It's just such a big part of what we do in general. And it's, being here at the CrossFit Games, obviously, you see the people that are on the competition floor, and oftentimes you watch that and you're inspired to go back and train harder and do more. But I think the impact of what coaches have or athletes have or just individuals that are here doing CrossFit do, because they live their lives differently, right, than the normal everyday human being. And I think a lot of times people lose sight of how inspiring they actually are just by doing things a little bit differently. And so I love the fact that that's something that you guys strive to and actually call out and are aware of and are intentional with that. It's like you are, whether you're inspirational whether you know it or not. So let's actually be intentional with that and try to use that to continue to develop people around us.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, for all the athletes out there, it does mean a lot when they shout out their coaches or tell them how important they've been. Because I think what I've seen is athletes tend to bond with certain coaches, and they develop a relationship, they develop trust with them. And a lot of times the coaches are going about their day, they maybe not even realize the type of inspiration or the way they've impacted others. So I always encourage athletes, if you have a coach, in your life who's been really helpful or meaningful, give them a shout out, let them know what they're doing and how that's impacting you, because it only gets them more fired up to show up and do their job day in and day out. Wake up early in the morning, maybe stay late at night.
Yeah, you know as well as I do, especially on an affiliate, it's like it can get monotonous. There can be the days where you're like, I really don't want to tell somebody to push their knees out anymore, keep their chest up, or go, coach this last class.
Yeah.
But when you can ground yourself on the impact that you're having and how much bigger it is than just the workout that you're doing, like you said, that keeps you inspired personally to keep doing what you're doing, because you realize that the impact is so much greater.
Yeah, 100%.
And I love how we've talked about how you try to do this for your members, but one of the biggest things I think all of your coaches can do is live those 4 things, just in their daily actions, like how they approach workouts, how they approach their own language, how they approach challenge, how they're who they're inspired by and expressing that. And inspiration a lot of time comes from just passion for what you're doing. So by design, if your coaches embody those 4, that'll be what your community is. So it's cool to see how you articulate it to the community. But I'm assuming that the coaches you've chosen are prime representatives of those 4 things. Yeah. And that's part of the reason that you choose them.
It certainly is the challenge, I'd say, and you probably all can relate to that as well, is you can come up with these ideas, set a mission and value for yourself, and figure out if you can embody that and live it. It's hard then to try and find other people, who buy into it, but then live that way. Or if not, how do we move our staff or move our team and our gym in that direction to get them there? So that's something that I know for me recently, I've certainly tried to learn more from and grow from is, okay, if we have this idea and we have this vision, how do we actually go execute and bring more people in? I think once you create it, we're starting to see more people hear about it, more people come to it because they've heard, such and such said, you've got a great space. We really like what you're doing over there. We try and, show it as much as we can on social media so people can see it that way. But I think that is certainly the challenge I've found is you have these ideas and what does it look like in real time? And then how do you continue to, keep that culture, but then continue to surround yourself with people who believe in it, want to be a part of it, and stay in it.
Yeah.
I just feel like CrossFit gyms are such a place where it attract, the people that are attracted to your affiliate are the people that are like you or like whoever the leaders are in their gym, right? Usually the head coach or the owners or that kind of stuff. So it kind of works out naturally, because if you are the owner and the head coach, then when you talk to somebody about being a coach in your gym, their perception of what a coach is exactly what you embody and what you do. And so their agreement more often than not is I want to do what you do and emulate what you do. And if that's not the case, then I think that's when you run into some of those culture issues. Yeah. Right?
I think one of the biggest differences we see in that is people who are unaware of how they interact with the world and maybe are slightly dishonest with Like they say the things, I've got these 4 values, but then they're not living 2 of them. And then they're like, hey coaches, why are you not this? And it's like, cause you're not that, dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
100%.
it's almost like one of those things where the best thing you can do is like make sure you're good. Like focus on yourself and you're actually living by the ideals that you have.
Yeah, you've got to do the thing.
Right.
Like,
So there's no dissonance between what you're saying and what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then people can be like, oh, these are the 4 values. Oh, I see it. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Great. Then what you're saying totally plays.
Yeah.
Because like you're living the expectation, and then when you meet someone,
it's so crazy to me when we hear coaches that are like, or owners that are like, I've got these coaches or athletes that always do this. Or always push back and won't scale and won't do this, and then we go to coach them through a workout and they're like, no, I'm not doing that. And you're like,
well, what do you expect?
no wonder nobody in your gym will scale or listen to you, because you won't listen to anybody. It's like, I can't believe that you can't connect the dots there. But
Or you see a move and they're like garbage, and you're like, well, why would anyone in your gym want to listen to you? Like, why would you want like because the basics are not that hard. You can have like impingement, you can have injuries, you can have this, but like to continue to work on yourself, but then ask it of other people, like that's a very important role within this space.
And I think the consistency to show up and put those forth each day is part of the challenge as well.
For sure.
Where it's like, okay, I can say these things and I can be about them on the good days when life's going well and everything's great. And on the days where things are tough, or as an affiliate owner, they're going to have ebbs and flows. It's like, can the members not have any idea what kind of day you're having? Because every day it's the same. The way I show up and the way that I am interacting with them, whether it's been like the worst day or the best day, like, because I think they can see those ebbs and flows. And to me, that consistency of how you show up and how do these values hold you, even in the tough moments, is important.
yeah, and I think that plays in a couple of ways. As a coach on the gym floor, right? We're not like, people are coming to us for their best hour of their day, right? So we can't have a bad day and allow that to impact their day. And then I think if you're, hopefully you're an athlete also in your gym and showing up on those days and still putting out on the days where you're struggling, and maybe today's not going to be a PR day and I'm just going to check the box, or this is that workout that I don't want to do and I know my members maybe don't want to do but they need to do. Do I show up and put it in? Do I show up and put the score that I know is going to be the lowest on the leaderboard? As soon as you make that example and do that consistently, to your point, I think that just paints the picture that this is okay and this is just how it goes around here. And you have the greater culture when everybody that's in leadership at your gym is displaying things that way. So
And I think too, like what you said there, which I really like, is this idea of how you interact with people as well, meeting them where they're at. Because as a coach, you can have a style and the way that you operate, and all of our coaches look different on the floor, which is great. We want that. And the ability to meet athletes where they are. So if you get somebody who's walking in that day and you can tell they've had a rough day and they're probably not going to be ready to push it, can I still meet them where they're at? Still bring everything to the table we've already highlighted, but also be the best possible coach for that individual that particular day. Because I think sometimes we can fall into that trap of, I just show up the same way every day and I'm just like the guy who's in everybody's face, and that can be tough as well. So this idea of how do we show up for ourselves, and then how do we figure out what that looks like for each athlete each day, because it can still be different.
Yeah, totally, 100%. You have a podcast as well, so
I do,
people can like learn from you and listen to your stuff, because it's about coaching. It's a very similar thing.
Yeah,
to this,
the goal behind the whole podcast was how do we help people live happier, healthier lives. So it's the Greater Culture podcast. It's attached to our gym. So
find it on the internet.
If you want, you'll see episodes with both of these two on there.
Oddly enough.
But it's the goal is to have conversations with coaches, folks in the wellness space, chiropractors, massage therapists, doctors, things like that, and just figure out what their stories are, what we can learn from them, what are ways that they found that can be really helpful for people to pick up little nuances. So it's really fun for me because I get to have conversations with people just like this, ask them a lot of questions, learn from them, and figure out ways we can help other people learn from some of their expertise. So those are things that I really enjoy doing.
Oh yeah.
Where else beyond the podcast?
Yeah, where can we find you?
On social, you'll find our gym at Greater_culture. So that's our Instagram. You'll see pretty much everything there. And then if you are interested in the podcast, Apple, Spotify, it's on YouTube as well. So if you search the Greater Culture podcast on any of those platforms, you should be able to see it. About 50 or so episodes deep right now. So it's been a really fun experience for me. But those are some places you can find us.
Hell yeah. And that's why he speaks so well on camera and is so succinct with his answers. It's because he's done this before. Unlike some of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You had a great first episode. Let's do it.
There we go.
We did. Well, thank you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. I appreciate your guidance. Thanks so much for the knowledge
Enjoy it, man.
and the Knowledge Pro. This was
There it
awesome.
is.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Behind the Knowledge. Now, if you want help developing your coaching and to learn from us directly, check out the Knowledge Pro. There we host live calls with our coaches every week where we discuss content together and work on skills to improve our on-the-floor coaching ability. To learn more, you can head over to besthouroftheirday.com/the-knowledge. And if you found this content helpful, we're going to be releasing new episodes every week, so subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.